You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Welcome into the Braves Postcast, part of the all-new Locked On Sports Atlanta. I'm Grant McAuley. He's Jake Mastroianni, and we're coming to you after a tough loss for the Braves on this Monday to start out their six-game road trip. Really, one mistake ruined a pitcher's duel between Ian Anderson and Freddie Peralta, and it resulted in the only run of this game. We'll go back through all of that. We'll get you caught up with all the latest Braves news, and there is a bit of that happening on this night. And, of course, we'll get you set up for the middle contest of the series, which will be coming your way tomorrow. Before we get into any or all of that, want to let you know, go ahead and subscribe here on the YouTube channel to Locked On Sports Atlanta. We appreciate our over 1,000 subscribers now, so keep that coming. Make sure you hit the bell so you get the notifications every time we drop a new episode. And be sure to subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Jake has all kinds of good stuff coming for you all season long, so if you'll please like, share, rate, review, all those good things for both the YouTube channel and for Locked On Braves, we'd really appreciate it. Jake, with all of that out of the way, there's a few things to like about this Braves game. Maybe there's a few things to dislike, and nothing more so than a frustrating 1-0 loss in a really well-pitched game overall. The offense, though, was unable to give Ian Anderson some support in this 1-0 defeat to Milwaukee as Freddie Peralta and that Milwaukee bullpen. Man, that's a pretty good combination right there.
Yeah, and both teams, look, they're built on their starting pitching. There might not be a lot of runs scored in this series. You got Fried and Burns in the finale. So offense will be hard to come by in this one. And the Braves offense obviously has been struggling a little bit at times this year. So tough 1-run loss there. And, of course, when you get to the back end of that Brewers bullpen, Williams and Hader are pretty lights out as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to put together a duo of relievers in either league, really in all of baseball, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a couple of guys with more strikeout potential than this two. And Josh Hader's pretty much been on another planet over the past year or so. He's had quite a string of success going, and in his young career, that's a pretty good weapon to have at the end of the game. But there were a lot of things that had to happen before we got there, and we're going to get into all of that right now. Game number 36 for the Braves, game 1 of 3 in this series up in Milwaukee. Braves dropped to 16-20. They're shut out on just 2 hits. They had 1 error made and 3 men left on base. Brewers improved to 23-13. They get the 1 pitch in the 6th inning of all things. 5 hits, no. That 1 run's all. He's now 3-1. Ian Anderson, tough luck loss. He's 3-2. Despite pitching well in this one, Josh Hader, his 14th save. Game lasted 2 hours, 31 minutes. Crowd of 25,880 were on hand to see it. And again, this was not an offensive kind of night for either of these clubs. This was a pitching clinic. And I think we've seen from Ian Anderson now for a while, since that first bad outing on April the 10th against the Cincinnati Reds, Ian Anderson has really started to put things together. 6 innings of 1-run ball tonight, 4 hits, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. Jake, he's got a 2.70 ERA in his last 6 starts after getting burned for 5 earned runs and 2 2/3 in his season debut. I would say those are the numbers you can live with, and 6 innings of 1-run ball, I can certainly live with that every 5th day.
Yeah, and we talked about it coming out of spring training. You know, out of all the pitchers, it was already a short spring. He had kind of a weird one with a rain out in one of his starts and not going very long, having that blister in another one. So you kind of gave him the pass on that first start. But like you said, he's been really good ever since then. And this is by far his best outing of the year. So really great to see. I mean, the starting pitching is not the problem for this Braves team.
No.
And the offense will get going at some point. It's nice to see the starting pitching really taking shape. I mean, you have 4 guys. Every time you go out there, you feel like they can give you a chance to win. And that's a great feeling. Now we just need a little bit of offense.
Yeah, at least a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Max Fried has been throwing really well all season long. He is who he is, and that's the ace of the Braves staff. We saw over the weekend Charlie Morton start to put some things together. Kyle Wright just backed up that one rough performance he had against Boston by bouncing right back against San Diego in a game that very well, the Braves could have and should have won. It got away from them over the weekend, and then you hit the road and you have a 1-0 loss waiting for you in Milwaukee. Just a very frustrating 24 or so hours, 36 hours, I guess, for the Braves. And what has been a frustrating start to the season as well, because there have been, Jake, I think some winnable games left out there by this Atlanta club, and that just hasn't been the way that this club has played the last 4 years.
No, it's not. And, you know, the errors are, especially from the infield. We kind of expect it from the outfield a little bit, especially when Ozuna's out there and you
Sure.
had Rosario out there early in the year. But it's the defense right now that's really hurting the Braves and uncharacteristic, especially again, that group on the infield has been so strong and so good. Another error by Olsen tonight. And to me, the play of the game, I know you had the wild pitch that scored the run, but to me, it was the lack of urgency to get to that ball that was hit by Renfroe to hold him to a single by Ozuna. Maybe he doesn't, but I just felt like there wasn't enough urgency there to get to that ball and cut it off. I need to go back and watch it again. I don't think Renfroe was even thinking about two until he looked up and saw who was out there, and he wasn't even close, and it wasn't even a play. That to me, it just is those little things right there this Braves team's just not doing right now that you're used to seeing from this club.
Yeah, and those are little things that on a night where you're unable to get on the board that you could do some run prevention. But Marcell Ozuna, there's some limitations to the way he plays left field. And ideally, you're not going to have him in left field too many times. But with this club without Ronald Acuna Jr. right now, I think it's just necessity that he's been out there as much as he has been, particularly over the last 5 or 6 days. But yeah, you got to get there faster. But Ozuna doesn't have the throwing arm. Teams do know that. That's in the scouting report. They are going to run on him some. And credit to Renfroe for making it to second base. He moved over to third on a ground ball to the right side, and then Ian Anderson bounced one. It got past Travis d'Arnaud, and that resulted in the first and only run of this game, and the Brewers picked up the 1-0 win. We'll get into a little bit more of what happened on this night, and of course, get you ready for Game 2 here momentarily. But first, I want to let you know about Built Bar because summer is coming, and you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on your family vacations. You can throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks. Make sure everybody has a bar so you are fueled for your summer adventures. Right now, you can go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your first order. That is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Now, diving in here a little bit deeper into this box score, which for most Braves fans, I don't think they're going to spend a whole lot of time looking at it, but we did kind of get an answer to what the Braves were thinking for their Tuesday starter. We know it's not going to be Spencer Strider because he followed Ian Anderson out of the Braves bullpen. 2 innings, 3 strikeouts, 1 hit allowed, no walks for Spencer. He looked great again. I'm starting to feel like, and I have felt like for a while, I mean, if you want to try starting him, then I guess you can. But at this point, I feel like just putting a clear label on him might be helpful, at least for those of us trying to guess who's going to start games for the Braves in that 5th spot, because he is, I think, a weapon out of the bullpen. There's no two ways about that. But now we know he's not going to be the guy who's going to be starting for the Braves in Game 2. We'll get to that and some late-breaking injury news in a moment. But, Jake, I've been a proponent. You've been a proponent of let's find out if Spencer Strider can start. But it just doesn't seem to be the way the Braves want to go with him, at least not right now.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is exactly what I have written down on my show notes here. He is a multi-inning reliever. Until shown otherwise, he is a multi-inning weapon out of the bullpen right now, and that is okay. Like you said, I think it would kind of help if you just put a label on it and said, that's what you're going to use him. I think he's great in that role. He's been great in that role. I'd still love to see what he could do in the starting rotation, but I mean, you've had, 3-4 opportunities now where you clearly had a chance to give him a shot in the rotation, and Snitker just hasn't. And again, that's fine. I love what Strider does and what he gives you. But like I said, until it doesn't happen, I'm just going to start believing he is a multi-inning reliever, a weapon out of the bullpen, similar to what Josh Hader was for the Brewers several years ago, who would come in the 7th, 8th inning and just either hold things there or shut it down and bridge that gap. And that's a very valuable piece of your bullpen. And that's what I think Spencer Strider is right now. I mean, it's become, like you said, pretty clear that's how Snitker wants to use him.
Yeah, I mean, it's an organizational choice as well because obviously roster moves have to be made. So there's a bunch of guys at the table, if you want to call it. What was Game of Thrones? The High Council there, where you got a bunch of people just kind of sitting around trying to make the decisions. But regardless, I mean, Spencer Strider is going to help your club, and he's helped him out of the bullpen quite a bit. It's just that curiosity factor of if he can help out of the starting rotation. We may or may not find out as far as that's concerned. But you brought up an interesting comp with Josh Hader. And I remember when Aroldis Chapman came up, he was a guy that could be a starting pitcher, but the Reds decided to deploy him as a reliever. Clearly, that's worked out pretty well for him. So perhaps a similar fate awaits Spencer Strider down the line. But before we compare him to 2 of the better relievers in baseball right now or over the last decade or so, we'll see what the Braves decide to do with Spencer Strider moving forward. One other piece of unpleasant business we have to get to in this one, of course, is when you looked at the Braves lineup card, Jake, there was no Ronald Acuna Jr. at the top. This is 5 consecutive games he's missed. He also got a team off day. he did test himself out before the game. He was running on the field and going through all of that. I guess it makes you at least a little bit optimistic that maybe he's taking some steps toward being back sooner than later. But I mean, at some point, I think you kind of have to make a decision as to whether or not he needs to go on the injured list. And I know they wanted to avoid it, but man, it seems like they've kind of painted themselves into a corner in some ways.
Yeah, Tuesday has to be that day for me. If he's not in there on Tuesday, you're almost at the point where you just got to put him on the IL. And I think Snicker pretty much said that if he comes back after his test and looks good, then there's a good chance he plays on
Yeah.
Tuesday. So if he's not in there on Tuesday, then I think you really got to start thinking about putting him on the IL and just go ahead and sitting him out for the remainder. It wouldn't even be that long now until the 10 days were up. But hopefully he gets back in there on a Tuesday, and hopefully he can help spark this offense.
Well, hopefully he is, but unfortunately, as I had kind of been under the impression, but just going and looking through this, you can only backdate the IL stint by 3 days, so you won't even be able to date it all the way back to last week. So it would cost him another week, even if you backdate it the 3 days. So they're kind of in a bit of a bind here with that decision. But the decision is based on, do you think Ronald is healthy enough to play? You don't want him overcompensating, and that's not even about the knee. That's if he hurts something else. If he hurts his groin even worse and suffers an injury that causes him to miss weeks and or months, the Braves would feel pretty silly about rushing him back. So I know that caution is the word of the day with him. I just know that it's frustrating both for I'm sure the Braves themselves, who want to have him back so badly, especially as good as he played in the first handful of games. And clearly the fans want to see him out there. And the Braves are simply a better club when Ronald Acuna Jr. is out there. That's your obvious statement here on the Braves postcast. But all of that aside, we do have a game 2 coming at you. That's going to be happening on Tuesday night up at Miller Park. We'll get you set for that in a moment. But our partners at Bet Online continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find the latest odds, news, sports developments, including this year's NBA playoffs, MLB scores, fights, and even next year's NFL futures. Bet Online is your source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to betonline.net today. The Bet Online is where the game starts. Now, we had a big question about who's going to be starting the game for the Atlanta Braves on Tuesday. We got our answer after the game, and unfortunately, it comes with an injury update, and maybe this sheds a little light on why Spencer Strider is going to be out in the Braves bullpen, and that is because Tyler Matzek, who has been kind of finding things, and it hasn't really appeared a lot lately, but he is going to land on the injured list with some shoulder inflammation, and that's one development here. It opens a roster spot, though, for the Braves to bring up a pitcher to start on Tuesday. That was a necessity. That's going to be Tucker Davidson. We'll get to the starter in just a moment, but your impressions, Jake? I know we've talked a lot about Tyler Matzek not really looking like himself at times this season, or really at any time this season, especially lately.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the velocity down, a good 2 miles per hour at times we've seen this. So it kind of makes some sense. And I think it's right by the Braves, shut him down for a little while, let him get back. And hopefully when he comes back, he looks more like the Tyler Matzek that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and this explains a little bit about why he would not have been throwing in that extra inning game on Sunday, perhaps, as well, because the Braves did allow Jackson Stephens to throw a couple of innings. I know a lot of people kind of wondered about that. They had used their better relievers prior to that, and then you end up in that Russian roulette situation with the extra inning rule. But either way, that does answer the question of why you didn't see Tyler Matzek on Sunday, and now we're not going to see Tyler Matzek for at least another week and a half or longer, depending on if he needs a rehab assignment. But the news, though, Tucker Davidson will be starting for the Braves in Game 2. It'll be his first start of the 2022 season. He's been down in Gwinnett since making one very rough appearance against the Washington Nationals earlier this season. Tucker on the year for AAA, 1-1 with a 4.44 ERA in 5 games started. He has punched out 34 batters in 26 1/3 innings against just 9 walks. So, Jake, I think lately he's been showing some promise, and the Braves are going to roll with Tucker Davidson, give him the opportunity to start against a very good Brewers club.
Yeah, I'm excited for Tucker Davidson here. I think he deserves a shot. I think he has a chance to be a good 4th or 5th starter in the Braves rotation. And he was a little shaky to start at Gwinnett this year, but his last couple outings have been really good. His last outing, maybe his best of the year: 5 innings, 4 hits, no walks, 1 earned run, and 6 strikeouts. And that no walks is key for a lot of these young pitchers like Bryce Elder, Tucker Davidson. When he's come up, they struggle with the command and walk a lot of batters. So hopefully that's a good trend for Tucker Davidson. Hopefully he can come up, have a good outing, and get the Braves a win, because they really need it on Tuesday.
They certainly do. They've had a couple of frustrating losses back-to-back. One winnable game against San Diego, one where just one little mistake on a Monday night in Milwaukee cost them. So it'll be Tucker Davidson, the lefty, making the start for the Braves. Adrian Hauser will get the ball for the Milwaukee Brewers, another one of their talented starting pitchers. He's 3-3 on the year, 3.86 the ERA, for the Milwaukee starter for Game 2. Again, Davidson and Hauser, Game 2 out of 3 in the series. 7:40 p.m. Eastern Time is the first pitch at Miller Park. And that'll wrap it up for us here on the Braves Postcast on this night. A frustrating evening for the Braves as they drop the opener of this 3-game series against Milwaukee, but they will dust themselves off, pick themselves up by the bootstraps, and whatever else they need to do to try to get a win on Tuesday in Milwaukee. We thank you as always for joining us here on the Braves Postcast, part of the all-new Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page and make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Grant McAuley. He's Jake Mastroianni. Once again, your final score, it was the Braves shut out by the Brewers 1-0. We will catch you tomorrow for another edition of the Braves Postcast. Until then, so long, everyone.